Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I am here with a giant book unhaul. I haven't even counted how many books, like you'll see it in the title of the video, but it's definitely more than 50, I think. And I almost never have book unhauls this big because I unhaul pretty continuously. Like basically after I'm done wrapping up a book, if it's one I'm going to get rid of, then I do that right away, or I do it in really small groups. I don't usually bother filming them. So even though I really like watching unhauls and I unhaul a lot, you don't often see them on my channel, but I have so many. And this is such a significant unhaul because I actually am unhauling books that I haven't read, which I very rarely do, but I thought I would go ahead and film it. And I was thinking that I was gonna try and like group them in ways that made sense to me, like into categories, you know, of like books that I've read, books that I haven't read, like etc. But I think I'm actually just gonna go by how they're packed into these boxes so that they're easier to like repack, because I'm kind of dreading having to do that again. So we're just gonna get into it. There's also gonna be a few books as I go through this that like I'm going to mention that I'm also unhauling, but I don't have them with, like if they're multiple books in a series, for example, there's a couple that I still have in my wrap up section because I need to talk about those, but I'll just mention those. Okay, I don't know why I'm out of breath. Probably because I was just carrying heavy boxes. So let's get into it. There's some unpopular opinions here. So let's start off with one of those. I'm unhauling volumes 1 and 2 of Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. I like the color palette. I think the concept is interesting, but I'll link the wrap up where I read and reviewed the first volume because I talked very extensively about my issues with this. It creeps me out. Like, I don't like the sexualization and infantilization of especially Persephone, but just the female characters in general. I wasn't sold on the romance. I just think the romanticizing of how young and naive she is pretty creepy. So even though like Hades doesn't necessarily do that outright, like the author kind of does, I just am not enjoying it. So somebody will be very excited to find these at the used bookstore. Then I have The Cabinet of Wonders by Marie Witkowski. This, like, I enjoyed, I really loved the first book in her Winter's Curse series. The second book I liked, but I liked less. And then the third book I was kind of disappointed in, but I would want to read other things from her. I just don't, I feel like this involves like a lot of journeying, which is not a thing I enjoy. And like I love middle grade, but there are middle grade books I'm way more excited to read than this one. So I'm just gonna pass that on. Then The Beast is an Animal by Petronelle van Arsdale. This is, like, I just don't know that this is like the spooky atmospheric kind of thing that I would enjoy because I'm pretty particular about those. And I've just had this a while and haven't read it. Given to the Sea by Mindy McGinnis. I have heard almost exclusively negative reviews of this book, and I've heard the sequel is better, but like people don't like this book. I really like water adjacent fantasy, and that's kind of the vibe this gave me. I also heard that there was maybe like queer rep at this, like specifically I think there might have been like I thought I remembered people talking about like ace representation, but I also heard some things about maybe that not being done the best way. I don't know. Yeah, like I basically was keeping this in the hope that I would like it when a lot of other people didn't, but I just don't know that that's going to happen. And Mindy McGinnis is an author where I have liked, have I just read one book from her? Or maybe two. Like I have liked things that I've read from her, but none of them have like really blown me away. And so I don't know that I'm going to take a chance on, one that like I know going in almost everybody dislikes. Also, I should mention a lot of these books are ones that I could get through my library if I change my mind, and sometimes that is all it takes for me to realize I don't actually want to read this book or to hang on to it. Just knowing I have the theoretical possibility of being able to read it later, it lets me let it go. I also have Spellbound and Demon Glass by Rachel Hawkins. I think these are the second and third books in the Hex Hall series. I already read and unhauled the first one, even though I think I gave it 3.5 stars. Like I definitely enjoyed it, and I was holding on to these for so long because I like Rachel Hawkins' writing. I like her characters. I knew they would be quick and like fun reads, but I just, for one thing, I heard some things about the way the series ends that I don't think I would like. And also I know that there is a spin-off companion book that was never picked up for the series finale, basically. So even though that's kind of separate from this main series, that does kind of make me less likely to read it. So I'm going to be passing those on as well. Then Royal Bastards by Andrew Schwartz. This is a political fantasy. I think it involves like a bunch of different like royal bastards who all band together to, I guess, try and save the kingdom. I've heard actually really good things about this one, but I've just kind of lost interest in it. And this is another one that I know I can get from my library if I change my mind. Then I have two books I'm kind of sad to unhaul because they're so beautiful. But I have Wicked Like a Wildfire and Fierce Like a Firestorm by Lena Popovich, or Lana. This is a duology. that is set in Montenegro, which I think is very cool. I don't think I've ever read a book set there, which was part of the reason I was interested in this. And I have gotten more into fabulism and magical realism, but I've heard very mediocre things about this series, and every time I think about picking it up, I just don't want to. I just feel kind of bored. So I think I'm gonna finally admit that I'm not motivated to read these. And like, getting more into a certain genre doesn't mean that you're gonna like everything you have from that genre, you know what I mean? Okay, then I have probably two of the oldest TBR books I'm unhauling here. I have The Sleeping Prince and The Scarecrow Queen by Melinda Salisbury. I hated the first book. I think that's one of the first like that might have been the first 1-star book I read since I started my channel, or like after beginning my channel. I really, really didn't like it, and these are like, I think, companion books mostly. Like, they're also sequels, but they follow different main characters, which is one of the reasons I thought I would like these better. And honestly, one of the reasons I was holding on to these is because I specifically ordered these paperbacks from the UK, and so sometimes I feel like if I have to put extra effort into acquiring a book, it makes me feel more bound to read it. But I just don't think that I'm gonna like these enough to justify holding on to them. Once again, I can read them from my library, and I do want to try this author's other series, but I just don't think this series is for me. Like, I have planned to get to the sequel multiple times. I even have the audiobook accessible to me, so I thought I could like read and follow along, which sometimes like forces me to get through books, but I just don't want to. I just don't want to, so I'm gonna unhaul these. Then one that I don't think will surprise anybody if you watched our Past Classics live show of this book, but Save Me the Waltz by Zelda Fitzgerald. I hated this. I don't think any of us really enjoyed it. I have a lot of sympathy for Zelda Fitzgerald as a person. F. Scott Fitzgerald was a piece of trash, and I'm 100% Team Zelda in all of their like personal life stuff, but I did not enjoy this book. I do like this cover. It was not the cover I ordered, but I did like that. So I will be passing this on. Yeah, just not for me. And just like a really weird book. Like, it's one of those where I just don't know what it was trying to do, but I don't feel like it did it. Then I have The Gentleman and the Thief by Sarah M. Eden. This is the second book in a proper romance companion series, and I liked this one, but I didn't love it. Like, I gave it like 3 stars, and like I said, I don't often unhaul TBR books. I'm much more likely to unhaul read books. And this is one that I read, I enjoyed, I'm glad I read it, but I don't need to keep it around. I'm not gonna reread it. So I'm passing that one on. Also unhauling The Selection by Kiera Cass. I did not enjoy this. And I think I actually might unhaul the rest of the series, even though I got like the whole box set on sale. I just, for one thing, I'm realizing I don't like romantic competition books, but I also just had a lot of issues with this book specifically, so gonna get rid of those. And then speaking of box sets I got on sale, I'm gonna get rid of the Half Upon a Time series by James Riley. I just read the first book this last month, which is why it's not here. I still have to wrap it up. And I just didn't like it very much. I was somewhere between dislike it and neutral. Like, I like fairy tale inspired stories, but this one didn't really work for me. Like, there were some interesting choices, I think, with the story, but I was kind of bored. Actually, I was very bored for most of it, and I don't feel like the characters were super strong. I also feel like the like crush thing was handled in kind of a weird way. So this is just another case where there's lots of middle grade books that I love. There's lots that I'm excited to read. So even though I like fairy tale stuff and I like middle grade, I don't need to hold on to the rest of this series. Okay, I have a very precariously balanced stack of the next books here. So let's hope this goes well. I have a Tiny Little Thing by Beatrice Williams. I read The Secret Life of Violet Grant a few years ago now, and I still think of it as like one of the most disappointing endings I've ever read, just because like I was resigned to what was going to happen, and then it looked like the author was going to do something different, and then she didn't, and I took that personally. But there were other things that I didn't like about it as well. But yeah, that book left a bad taste in my mouth. And then, kind of like I've been saying with other kinds of books, I enjoy historical fiction. I'm pretty good at finding historical fiction I enjoy. There's a lot that I'm excited to read. There's a lot I already love. So I don't really need to like hold on to ones that might work a little better for me. The premise of this one, it sounded interesting, so it was the only one that I held on to of her books after I realized maybe they weren't going to be for me, because I thought this one might be more intriguing. But I read like the first couple chapters. I'm not sure I'm as interested in the premise for this book as I thought, and also I think it's gonna really, really irritate me that the main character is known as tiny because she has such a tiny waist. The like obsession with like tiny girl as like a romantic trope is something that really annoys me, so I'm just gonna let this go. I also have a couple of books in the same series. I have A Shadow Bright and Burning, and A Poison, Dark, and Drowning by Jessica Cluess. I actually quite enjoyed the first book. I gave it 4 stars, but for a while I had kind of been assuming that I would read the sequel and then stop because I know things that happen in the third book that I just am not interested in. And then the whole Jessica Cluess racism thing happened, and I was like, I have an extra reason to not want to read these anymore. So basically just made that decision easier. I'm obviously not saying that like nobody should ever be read one for books again. I'm just talking about my thought process and how there were multiple reasons that I just don't need to hang on to these books. Then I have an example of one that I did really enjoy, but like as I've said, I will unhaul a book even if I give it 4 or 5 stars if I know that I'm not going to want to reread it. So I have The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. This is a gorgeous cover, by the way. I did enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars, but one of the things I talked about is that like something about her particular writing style was kind of exhausting for me to read. Like, it's not bad writing and it's not overwriting. I don't really know how to explain it. Like, you know, there's some authors that just put words together in a way that really clicks with your mind. This is kind of like the opposite of that, I guess, which sounds super negative. It was a very good book. I'm very glad I read it. I might still pick up other things by her, but I don't think I'm going to want to reread this one. So I'm going to pass it on to somebody who will be very excited to find it. I also have The Queens of Innis Lear by Tessa Gratton. This is a fantasy retelling of the King Lear story that is supposed to be centering the daughters more. I tried to read this, I think, a couple years ago now. I didn't want to admit that this wasn't working for me. So this is actually a DNF, which we know I don't DNF books very often. I have some friends who really love this book, and I'm glad, but it just wasn't really working for me. I feel like the overwriting was frustrating to me. I also feel like for being a book that was supposed to be centering the female characters, they felt very flat to me, like very one note. And I got like, I mean, it's a long book, but I did get like more than 100 pages into it. So like, I feel like we should have started seeing some character development. Also, one of the only characters that I actually liked and cared about, I don't like where their storyline is going or where it ends. So then I have 5 books in the same series. I have the first 5 books in the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik: Temeraire, Victory of Eagles, Empire of Ivory, Black Powder War, and Throne of Jade. I read the first book, once again, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I'd always been intending to continue the series. I just was never in the mood for it though. I've also heard kind of mixed things about some of the other books, and even though I did really enjoy the first book, a lot of what I liked about it was the friendship between the main character and his dragon, and I feel like that is like less of a focus in some of the other books. And I don't know, I feel like I'd be bored in the later books in the series, and they're not even doing these editions anymore, so like that would irritate me too. So initially I was thinking that I would unhaul these for now and maybe continue the series later, like maybe from my library or something. But like the longer it goes, the more I'm like losing interest, even though I like historical fantasy, and I especially apparently like Napoleonic War historical fantasy. I think the specific choices Naomi Novik is making with these books just aren't as interesting to me. Like, they're well written. If the premise intrigues you, I would definitely recommend these, at least based on the first one, but like, I just don't know that it's gonna hold my interest for later on. Like, I really want Naomi Novik to write more like atmospheric, like fairy tale kind of books, because those are the ones I really love from her. But yeah, getting rid of those. And then I actually have another group of 5 books from the same series, and that is from the, what is the name of the series? Hold on. Beyond the Four Kingdoms, by Melanie Sellier. So I don't have book 2 because I only listened to that one on audio. I have A Dance of Silver and Shadow, A Crown of Snow and Ice, A Dream of Ebony and White, A Captive of Wing and Feather, and A Princess of Wind and Wave. I did like very much enjoy the first book in the series. I didn't care for the second one, but I kind of knew that going in. But I've kind of lost interest in the rest of these. I'm not sorry I bought them, because this is an indie author and I always like supporting indie authors, so I'm not like, I don't regret spending the money on these, you know? And it's not that I don't recommend them, it's just that like I have found, I think I'm like getting a lot better at finding indie fantasy authors that like specifically really work for me, and so I don't feel the need to like hold on to a series that was kind of middle of the road for me, at least based on the first book, the second book, and then the part of the third book that I read. So I don't know, I feel kind of bad about this one. Like, I'm really like not steering people away from it. I just think it doesn't quite align with my tastes as much as it could with other people. Like, the series is very well loved, like the reviews are very high, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. Like I like the way that it reimagines fairy tales. I think it's just like, the romances leave me wanting a little more. So that was, I think, a big part of it. And like, these are fantasy romances, so that's kind of a big element of the story. Okay, so a few books that you will recognize from recent wrap-ups. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I was very underwhelmed by this. I found the story frustrating and the ideas repetitive and sometimes like insulting to me. Like, I don't know. I'll leave my wrap up if you want to hear more thoughts on that. Sadly, also The Secret Life of Miss Mary Bennet by Catherine Cowley. I just thought this was so boring. And it was really hard to like care about what was happening because like none of the characters were really interesting or likable. Like Mary herself was, I liked her, but basically all the other characters, apart from like a couple who really weren't in it that much, everyone except those two were like either not very interesting or like you weren't sure how much you should even invest in them. So like, just not my thing. I'm very sad about that. Then Goldmane by Kate Stradling. This is another example of a book that I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars, but I want to pass it on to like other people to discover, especially because Kate Stradling I think is a really talented fantasy author. But also this isn't my favorite by her, so I don't feel like I need to hold on to it, but I would like other people to be able to find it, you know? So would definitely recommend this one. I'm not getting rid of it because I didn't enjoy it. Then Vampire Academy by Michelle Mead. I have not read this one and I don't think I'm going to. Like, I always intended to try the original series because I enjoyed the Bloodlines series so much, which is like the spin-off. But Beautifully Booked Bethany is doing, like, she read this book recently, and she's been like talking about the new show, and I just think that I think there's a lot of things about this series that would bother me with the main relationship and like the Not Like Other Girls stuff and everything. And honestly, the main reason I was even interested in it was because I felt like I would like the side characters and the side relationships a lot more. And I feel like that would still be true, but I just don't know if I would enjoy those enough to make this book and this series worth it for me. Then I have Truly Madly Royally by Debbie Brigade. This is another one that I haven't read and I've heard very good things about it. So as with many of these books, I'm not like unhauling this because I heard it's bad or anything. I don't like royalty romances. I also don't like celebrity regular person romances. I think the reason I picked this up is because it was getting a lot of good buzz. People were talking about how cute it was, and I'm like, I can enjoy cute. Like, yes, let me try it. And then like as time went on, I'm just like, you know, I should have realized, like, I've known for a while that I don't like royalty romances. So I think it was overly optimistic that I picked this one up. But again, I have heard good things about it. So if that is something you like, I would definitely, you know, look into that. Then I have a couple of historical fiction books. I have The Miniaturist and The Muse, both by Jessie Burton. I have planned to read these books for so long. I know that they're kind of polarizing. Like, I have friends who have really enjoyed them and then friends who really didn't like them, but I just don't think I'm that interested in the premise. I kind of picked these up because they were very cheap and I had heard pretty good things about her books, and I'm like, I know that I enjoy historical fiction. Like, I know people love these books, but as I've said with other genres, like, knowing that I love a certain kind of book or like books in a certain category does not mean I'm gonna love everything that like anybody else talks about in that category, which is an obvious thing, but I think there are certain like hyped books that you can kind of fool yourself into thinking you're gonna love. And I feel like this was kind of those books for me, or some of those books. And again, I can get these from my library if I ever change my mind. This one is a little hard for me to get rid of. This is Strange Sweet Song by Addie Rule. I have not read this one either. This is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, which I love Phantom of the Opera. I feel like there's not enough retellings of it, but I have tried to read this a couple times and I never get more than like a couple pages because I don't like the writing style. It is so overwritten and over descriptive. Also, the main character's name is Sing, and she can sing. And I think that would drive me up the wall. Like, yeah, the reason this is hard for me to get rid of is also because my library does not have this, and I feel like if I did change my mind later, it'd be hard to get my hands on this book again, or basically I'd have to rebuy it, which I don't love. But I've had this for so long. I feel it like hanging over me as like oh, I should really read that sometime, which like, ideally you don't want to have too many of those books like that, you know? Like, you should be excited about the books on your TBR. Like with the Kate Stradling book, I have another indie fantasy book that I really enjoyed. It's by an author I love, but it's not one that I especially think I'm gonna want to reread, or if I do, I believe I have the ebook and the audiobook through my library, and I want other people to discover and enjoy this author. So I have A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. I love T. Kingfisher. I really enjoyed this one. I liked the baking magic. I liked the thematic discussion of like heroism and like just like the deconstruction of the chosen one trope, or like the kid saving the day trope. So I really enjoyed a lot of things about this, but as I already explained, that doesn't mean I have to hold on to it. And then I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars, so this is not me like saying I actually enjoyed it less than I thought. This is just one that I really want. I want like teens to be able to find this book and read it and like see themselves, see others. Like I just want people to read this book, and so I'm like putting my copy out into circulation, you know? This one I am on the fence about. I have Lady Alma by A.G. Marshall. This is in the Solarian Chronicles, and I might hold this one until I read the other book in this duology, or like these connected books, because sometimes I need to read like a couple of books to decide if I'm gonna want to reread the whole series, you know? Like a lot of times I can just get rid of one book in a series and I'm fine, even if I want to keep the others, but sometimes that doesn't happen and I want to like have a better idea of the whole series to decide if I want to hold on to multiple books in it, you know? So I feel like that's what I'm gonna do here, because I did enjoy this, but I don't know that I would want to reread it, you know? I feel like I said, you know, way too many times there. Another book that I really enjoyed, but that I just don't need to reread, I have The Truth About Alice by Jennifer Matthew. 4 stars. I really liked it. I can see why a lot of people don't, but it really worked for me. John Eyre by Mimi Matthews. This was part of my Reading Jane Eyre retellings vlog, and I gave this one 3.5 stars, so I quite liked it, but it wasn't like amazing. Like it wasn't one of my favorites that I read. It was kind of in the middle for me, and I think it is kind of a cool concept, so I feel like there is definitely going to be people who are excited to see this in like the bookstore or something, or maybe a little free library, wherever I end up putting these. I have Unsettled by Reem Faruqi. This is a novel in verse that I did end up really enjoying. The first part was a little rocky for me because I didn't quite love the writing style, and I feel like we weren't getting as much development of the characters as I wanted. But by the end we were definitely seeing more of that, and I gave it 4 stars. Like I ended up really liking it, but this is another one that I just want like kids in my community to have access to. As you're seeing, that's sometimes a factor in books that I choose to unhaul, is like if it's one that I really enjoyed but I don't know that I would want to reread it, and it's also something that I think like readers around me could really like get excited about or benefit from. Like basically I love thinking of like a kid finding this in a little free library and like, you know, getting to read that story. Like, so sometimes that is a factor for me as well. Then I have a couple of books that I have not read. I have You Truly Assumed by Lila Sabrine. I'm really sad about this one. The cover is gorgeous, and I still think the concept is really interesting. Deals with a lot of Islamophobia, specifically for Black Muslims, and like that kind of intersection. Also deals with like online hate, but I have heard really bad things about this from Muslim reviewers. Like my friend Hannah was talking about how this was just really disappointing, and like the more time that's gone on, the more issues I have heard Muslim reviewers have with it, and I just like there's so much better like Muslim representation out there, and I do know that there are people like Muslim readers who have really enjoyed this one, so I'm obviously not discounting that. I just don't know that it's one that I want to hang on to anymore. And it wasn't just the representation, I also like heard things about like the writing and the characterization that were just very sloppy, and basically there were issues with this book, but then also as a story it just could have been a lot better, so I just don't feel the need to give this one a try. Then I have Romanov by Nadine Brandes. This is a really interesting book because like I feel like it was one that was like really pushed by the publishers when it came out a couple years ago, because a lot of people were like hauling this, talking about it, talking about the release, and then I did see some people read it, and I feel like most of the reviews were pretty middle of the road. I do find this time period in Russian history interesting, but this is kind of like, I feel like one of the things I was hearing is that like the historical part and then the like fictional part, I don't even know if there might be a tiny bit of fantasy in it, I'm not sure. But like those things weren't blended very well. I also heard that the romance was really weirdly done, and yeah, like I feel like this would probably be like at best a 3 stars for me, even though a 3 and especially a 3.5 stars is not necessarily like a bad rating by itself. In fact 3.5 usually means I liked it. I liked a lot of things about it. I just don't feel the need to like try this one, you know? Then I have a couple of books I have read, and this is a series that I am enjoying and I definitely plan on continuing, but similarly to some of these other books, I just don't think I'm gonna want to reread, or I don't think I'm gonna want to like own the books and reread them. Like I might reread them from my library or something. But I have The Mistwick School of Musicraft by Jessica Corey, and The Midnight Orchestra, which is the sequel, also by Jessica Corey. And as I said, I have been enjoying this series. I gave the first book 4 stars and the second book 3.75 stars. I do plan to continue it, but I just don't think it's going to be like a top favorite for me, so I am making some room on my shelves because space is definitely at a premium, like many of us readers. Okay, and I think we're finally on the last stack here, unless I'm forgetting some, which is possible, but I think unlikely. I have The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery by Gabrielle Zevin. I have enjoyed things I read by Gabrielle Zevin, and I do like that she writes so many different things, but my friend Kelly was talking about this one kind of recently, maybe it was a year ago actually, and I I don't know, I feel like I would like the beginning part and then not like the second half of this book. I do like that it involves a bookstore, but there were just other things about it that I'm like, I don't know that I would enjoy that one as much as I hoped I would. And then I have 2 books in the same series, Ice Kissed and Frostfire by Amanda Hocking. This is like a wintry kind of fantasy book. I believe it's like related to, maybe it's even in the same world as her series that has like trolls. And like the concept of the series sounds kind of interesting, but like all the reviews I've seen, basically all of the reviews I've seen have just been like ones that made me think I probably would be really frustrated by this main character and the romance, and I just don't know that the plot would hook me either. Plus I'm more of a character reader anyway. Then I have Given by Nandi Taylor. This is a romance, like a fantasy romance. I think I didn't realize that this was basically a like shifter romance where like the love interest is an animal almost the entire time, which I don't like. And also my friend Annalisa Ely read this kind of recently, and the way she talked about the hero, I think I would really not like this. Like, I think there are multiple big problems I'd have with this book. I feel like I'd like the main female character, but I don't think I'd like much else. Especially because like the romance of this is a big part of it, and I don't think I would like the romance or some of those tropes or the lead, like the hero. So I'm gonna pass that on. And then I have a duology that like I have tried to get into. This is another one where I have friends who have enjoyed it, but it's just not working for me. I have The Savior's Champion. Sorry, that's a weird way to show you that. And The Savior's Sister, both by Jenna Marachi. This is another fantasy romance duology, or like their companion books. And I just really don't like the writing. I have tried to get into it and it just feels so like, kind of, not like pretentious, but it's like fake dramatic almost. Like just the over descriptiveness, and like it feels kind of cheesy to me. And writing style is one of the hardest things for me to push through if I really dislike it, because obviously it colors the whole book. And yeah, these are also pretty long books, so I don't want to like push myself through them. So I'm going to be passing those on as well. Then I have one that I was initially very excited about. That is Cast in Firelight by Dana Swift. This is an Indian-inspired fantasy. Like I was seeing reviews from like On Voices reviewers talking about like that the representation isn't done in the best way. Like the author, I believe, is married to an Indian man, and she wrote this book. Like she talked about writing this book as for like if they have children together, you know, she wanted like their kids to see themselves in stories, which like as the reviewers were saying, like that is like that idea is like understandable and I guess, you know, good or something to support, but also like you still should do a good job. And also like why did she feel like she had to be the one to like write this kind of fantasy? I don't know, like there are definitely authors who can like include other cultures in their stories in a way that is like respectful, you know, they do research, they have sensitivity readers. And as I said, I have not read this one, so I can't give you like specifics. I just know that from the reviews I was seeing, the representation wasn't done in the best way. And also just like, I think the romance would have really frustrated me, and I think that the characterization sounds like it wasn't very good. Those are things that I feel very strongly about in books, so this is another case where like there were kind of multiple converging reasons that I don't think I want to try this one anymore. And as I was saying with others, I'm not saying that like nobody should read this book, you shouldn't read this book. I was just talking about my thought process. And then a couple of books that you also saw me talk about recently, The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I had a lot of issues with this, and then the longer that I have been away from it, the more angry and frustrated this makes me. Like I was gonna unhaul it anyway, but now I'm like extra glad to unhaul it, because I ended up going from like a 3 or a 3.5 to a 2.5 stars, because yeah, check out that wrap up. And then likewise with Monstress by Marjorie Liu, illustrated by Sana Takeda. I know a lot of people love this one. I really didn't, for a multitude of reasons. I feel like when I bought this several years ago, I feel like people were describing it in a way that to me feels a little misleading. Not that they were doing it on purpose, but like I feel like people were really emphasizing that this was like a fantasy story with some like creepy elements. I would actually call this like horror and fantasy. And it's not like, oh, this book scared me too much so I didn't like it. Like I was okay reading this, I just didn't enjoy that part of it. I also was not a fan of some of the characterization choices, and I just like wasn't super interested in it. And the main premise is also something that I wouldn't have been interested in if I had known that that's what it was about. So I feel kind of bad for disliking this so much because some of it is related to expectations, but I also know I'm not going to want to continue the series. I really didn't like this. I hated reading it pretty much. I gave it 2 stars. And also, as you'll see in that wrap up, there are like actual story things that I had a lot of issues with too, so it's not just that this didn't align with my personal taste, you know? I feel like I have to justify that sometimes. Okay, so I think that is everything. However many books you'll see in the title. Then there's a couple others that I didn't show too for like various reasons. Like I was talking about, some of them I like have to wrap up still and etc. So anyway, this is a lot of books. By the time this video goes up, these will already be passed on to other people or to like, you know, bookstores, little free libraries, etc. And I also think this is a good example of like, there's a lot of different reasons that I'll unhaul a book. So it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I don't like this book or I regret reading this book or something. Like a lot of these books are ones that I enjoy. It's just that I know that I'm not going to want to reread or have access to all the books that I read. And so if it's one that I enjoy, but that I don't need to hang on to, I'm like, why would I, you know, hang on to it? And also, as you were seeing, some of these are ones where like, I really enjoy this, would definitely recommend it. I want somebody else to find this and enjoy this too, you know? So I hope you guys enjoyed this unhaul. As I said, I unhaul books a lot, but I don't often post them because I usually just kind of do them as I read the books and as I talk about them. It's like if I decide I don't want to hang on to it, then I'll just like get rid of it rather than saving them up. But because I actually went through like my bookshelves and got rid of a lot of TBR books, got rid of a lot of books that I had read and hung on to for a while, but I was kind of like, you know, giving them a second look, I ended up with having a lot at once when I normally don't. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know a book that you unhauled recently or that you're planning to unhaul, or a book you didn't like, or you could let me know a book that you did enjoy but you're still gonna unhaul it, because obviously there's a lot of those here too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!